I'm
As a
just gonna.
human.
There you go. I just start that, and then I'll just start it however we want to start it. Nice to see you. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if it was gonna work. I was like having all these problems on my end, like I often do, and then there you were.
Yay.
So thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So what's been going on? You got a Christmas song that just came out?
Mm. Wow, is it ever a Christmas song? It's the saddest Christmas song on my end. It was anyway. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Um, I actually did it for the first time last year, and then I thought next year I got to record this. So of
Mm.
course, we have to do our Christmas songs earlier in the year.
Yeah. I
So I
often
had
do
to.
them a year in advance. I usually do them like the Christmas before while I'm feeling it, and then
That is
release it the next year.
that's so much smarter than my plan, which was to do it in July.
Which is the case for most folks. But so you had to like get back into the mood of last Christmas, which was not being all together.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Through the years, we all will be together if the fates allow, and they quite frankly did not
Hmm.
last year. I guess this year will be different. I hope. Um, but actually, I found it really easy to go into that space, even in the summer, for some reason. I think it was like the depth of the emotion that I felt last Christmas that like I was just able to access it again, and it was kind of like a you know uh, very stripped down thing. Like that's what I was kind of interested in doing. I was doing these home demos that were acoustic only, me only. That's it. Like you know,
Did you
with,
record that?
yeah,
And did you do all that guitar harmony, like the
yeah,
chordals? That's so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and I did
I
it. I did it in this room. That was what was really cool. I had a guy, James McKenty, come to my house and set up his studio for one 36-hour period.
yeah. And then you're like, wait, why did I ever go anywhere else? This is so much better working from home. There are some advantages, right? You're so comfortable. You can,
Yeah,
you work really. I find that I've learned a lot just from working from
yeah.
home.
Have you ever plugged it? Like, I had never plugged or thought of plugging in an amp in my hallway, and like just over the stairs over there, there's a little kind of alcove, and that's where we set up my amp, and it sounded like home. I found like those little
Wow.
chordal kind of voicings over top. Like that's what that is. It's the hallway, like it's a hallway guitar in my
It is
house.
your house. It's
It's
your
my
house
home.
reverb.
Yeah.
This is my house reverb setting.
Yeah. Yeah. What
Yeah,
home sounds
it's
like.
I didn't real that's cool. I mean, it's funny because of course I recorded the same Christmas song. And maybe we were both just feeling the same way. Like I've recorded a lot of Christmas songs and I hadn't gone to that one. And I started listening to it more last year, and it probably was because the sentiment just hit home
Yeah.
in a big way.
Yeah.
Um, but I found it really interesting just to get nerdy from a musical perspective.
Mm.
Uh, the voicings you used were super cool.
Oh, thank
Did you
you.
spend quite a bit of time like kind of figuring out how, because there's some really like I was kind of approaching it like a jazz song and playing all those weird chords and all these little movements, and I was kind of basing it on the Sinatra recording a bit, which I love.
Mhm.
And then I heard yours, and I was like, "Oh, that's such an amazing way to to move through some of those chords, especially in the bridge."
You mean by
Here we
not doing
are.
them?
Well, no, but you did them. You did them. That's the thing. Like, no, it's not even not doing them. This is the thing: is that sometimes melodically you hit all the melodic marks, and there's no
Mhm.
chordal tension. Do you see
Right.
what I'm saying? Like you are doing them. You are
Yeah.
doing them because the chords like I just find it, and sometimes it's like I always find that a real art. Like I find sometimes when like Willie Nelson sings a jazz standard, sometimes he isn't playing all those chords. He's like making it somehow can like turn it into a 3 chord song or a 4 chord song.
I
I
know.
like that. I think it's really cool. So did you
Yeah.
spend a fair amount of time kind of like listening to the song and then sorting out what kind of chords you wanted to voice underneath it?
Not really. I mean, the first thing that came was that little the acoustic line that you hear at the beginning, like the just really kind of bell-like do 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 do, simplifying the heck out of the verse, and then it made sense to not do much with the other stuff. And I suppose it was myself and James. He was kind of like, we were both vibing in the room, kind of thing, when I was tracking the electric, but we didn't want to do too much. But we also wanted to have like a little riff, so that do 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 that repeats through the whole thing. We thought that was important. So but it was also, I had never met James before. So it was
Wow.
like this very fresh, like I think there was something to be said for the fact that I'd never met him. My partner was gone doing his own show, so I was alone in my house with this person that I'd never met before, being the most vulnerable,
Yeah,
tracking
yeah.
like new demos and a Christmas song. And so I think that led to some interesting stuff because it was like no pressure. He doesn't know me. He doesn't have any expectations of what I'm going to do. And I don't know him. And I'm like, there was this beautiful kind
I
of,
think there's something so cool that can happen when it's a fresh relationship. 'Cause
yes,
it's not like once something good's happened, not that it doesn't go away, but
yeah,
it's happened, and no matter what we think, we kind of base it on that other experience. It's like, oh, remember when we did this, or remember how well it worked when we did this. When
yeah,
you let go of that, and you're in a fresh situation with someone, it's amazing what can happen, right? Because all of a sudden you're going into the unknown together, but you're both excited about music. As long as you pick the right person to be in the room with,
yeah.
they have like some enthusiasm, and then you kind of forge into your own, because it feels fresh, it feels really nice.
Well, thank you. I think too on what you're saying there, like another thing that happened to me, and I know on hearing recordings from my past, like the ones that sound the coolest to me or the most honest are usually the ones that I'm flying by the seat of my pants. Like I'm not really aware that we're tracking this guitar line. It's just like, okay, just do something, and you do it, and you're completely in the moment, completely present. You're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about, oh, this song's going to come out in 6 months. And
Yeah, exactly. Or like, we got to make this cook like the last time we did this.
yeah,
Like, I
which is a
always think about
nightmare.
that, which exactly, as soon as you go into that state of mind, you're right. Like, and it works best. I remember like when Classified and I still work together a lot, but I remember the
Mhm,
first sessions compared to the next, we did this for a number of years, but I remember the
mhm,
first times, and we were aware of it because we still wanted to work together. We were trying to keep it fresh. But I
mhm.
remember every time we'd have to catch ourselves and be like, no, no, like this works when we are working by instinct alone,
Yes.
basically. As soon as it becomes too intellectual, you lose something.
Yeah, because
And it,
you're
and
examining yourself from the outside
that's
almost.
right. Yeah.
Like, what did we do before? How are we supposed to be doing this? It's like, just do it.
Yeah. 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 I kind of find that maybe there's something about pop music that's kind of interesting to me because so often the records are made in one day by a
Mhm.
group of people who may not have met before. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
Like a lot of
Mhm,
pop sessions that's how it works. It's 3 days and then you're 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, whatever, in a
mhm.
room for a day, or maybe a couple days and they do a number of tracks. But it's like there's this speed and instinct to it. And even though, people say like, oh yeah, pop music, well, it's formulaic and it has this and that. Yeah, but a lot of the sonic and a lot of the excitement is based on this like first time, and they probably know it too. They know that once they've worked with a person a number of times, that the likelihood to hit that magic goes down, kind of.
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah.
obviously the working relationship was good with James.
It was great. Yeah, I
Eh,
was so happy. And he's done a lot of work with that similar thing. He'll take his gear to people's houses. So I know him through Greg Keeler from Blue Rodeo,
Okay,
and he's been recording Greg since forever and knows the Sadies. And yeah, so it made sense. We had a lot of mutual friends.
I wondered how you had heard of him, and so he was cool coming to your house, and you live in the country, don't you?
Yeah, so it was like, get groceries. Not sure what this person likes. We're gonna have to cook our own food. Like,
It's so much. It's a funny thing, right? You really have to trust the people. But again, you had the Sadies, you had Greg that kind of are going, yeah, yeah, this guy's cool. It's going to be a good
mhm.
vibe. But it's something you like. You let them into your not only your house but into your heart. Like you are singing. Singing is. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it. It's a vulnerable feeling.
So vulnerable. Yeah, agree. And there's no amount. I don't think there's an amount of confidence that you can have when you're like on a microphone in a room where it's completely silent and the person is waiting for you to do something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care how confident you are. That's never, you're never not thinking about the situation, you know? Ugh, anyway,
Well, you sang it beautifully. You
thank
did.
you.
You sang it beautifully. I'm curious, like, it's been fun to have these conversations with different artists, but one thing I was excited about this one is that we don't really know each other. And like many of the people I've chatted with, I've known them for years. You know what I
So
mean?
is this fresh? Is that what you're saying?
This is like that. This is like Hugh and James. This is a fresh. We're new to this, so we get to go wherever we want, which is kind
Yeah.
of cool. But I'm curious to know, like, honestly, just about your upbringing and stuff. Like, did
Mm.
you live in the country now? Did you grow up in the country?
No, but my parents split when I was really little, and my bio dad's parents moved to the country, North Bay, which is actually 2 hours further than where we live from Toronto.
Okay.
Um, but so I grew up spending like summers and weekends. They were kind of like my parents at, my extra set of parents when I was a kid. So I'd go for literally 2 months in the summer, 2 weeks at Christmas break.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'd go hang out, and they lived on a lake called Trout Lake, and like, cut down Christmas trees. In the summertime, we'd go on the boat, like do all kinds of crazy stuff. I'd catch frogs. Like, it was a whole situation of getting to be this like country kid on a lake, and then going back home to my parents' little apartment with my little brother, you know,
Which was in Hamilton.
in Waterdown, which is quite nearby.
Okay.
But it was a very like a stark difference, because my mom and my stepdad were super young, and like, lacking careers, finances, all those things. So it would be like, okay, I can go to grandma and grandpa's and get the expensive cereal, and like, like it was like paradise. And of course, it makes sense now that I'm so lucky I found this spot in the country. But it's the same landscape. It's like rocky evergreens, birch trees, and like lakes everywhere. So it's
And
pretty. Oh,
it's
sorry.
amazing. I love North Bay. I love that area around North Bay.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, I did the French River. I canoed the French River a few years ago. Well, I guess it
Ooh.
was probably 10 years ago. It was an amazing trip.
Right.
An
Yeah, we're
amazing.
closer to Algonquin. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever been to
Oh, that's where
Algonquin.
you are now.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty much. I
Nice.
mean,
So
yeah.
in Shield country,
Yeah.
rocks, rocks
Rocks.
and group of
The house
seven.
is built on rocks.
Yeah.
Can't get rid of
Amazing.
them.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're not going. The foundation is going to be. Yeah, it's one of those things. And that's what's cool. I love that environment. I really do. I mean, I love the outdoors. I love lakes, and that there's a reason why it's painted so many times. Why we know that landscape in Canada, because
Mm,
it's striking and it's wild feeling, and it isn't that far from the city, but feels like an eternity away from the city.
it really does.
So how's it felt moving up there? Like, you spent a good portion of your career in Hamilton, right? Like, but that's kind of where
Yes,
that's where you were playing in bands, and then all of a sudden you're kind of going, okay, was this like a pandemic move? Like, let's hit the country, let's get out of the city.
exactly. That's
Was it?
exactly what it was last
Okay.
November. And told no one. As many, I know now a lot of people moved during the pandemic for different kinds of reasons, right? But ours was like, yeah, we had to take this opportunity. And um but I mean, it turned out to be the right thing. Like, I totally am a country person. I had a garden all summer long, like fed myself, fed my neighbors, like fed my partner. It was just like,
Oh, so
we
there's
just had
soil. There is soil on top of
there
that
is
rock.
soil.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was very rocky. I had to borrow a rototiller, and let me tell you, it was quite an experience.
Right on.
But it's just so, like, this is totally what I'm into. I love this landscape. It's so inspiring, like, to wake up here every day and get to go hiking, or whatever. Just walking down our road is amazing. You know?
Yeah, I bet. I bet. I was curious because I saw you post some stuff, and you felt I just sensed this kind of like at homeness, this comfort.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, well, did she grow up in the country? Like, what is it it's obviously resonating, and it makes sense. Like, I feel like there's been a lot of people who've moved to New Brunswick, including me over the last
Oh
year.
yeah,
Like, I
I
moved
know.
home. I
Yeah, and we
moved
wanted
home.
to do that too.
You
I was
know,
like, maybe we'll move out east.
I had heard that you were thinking
Yeah.
about moving
I
out
was
east.
talking
Yeah,
to Matt Anderson about it. He was sending me listings.
I bet, man. He's a fan. He lives in an awesome spot.
I know.
He lives in and he's from not too far from where I'm in Fredericton now, but
Right.
he's from Perth Andover, so he's just from up the river. But he's from a rural spot. He finds himself in a rural spot now, and I've loved being home too. Like, I've kind of felt the same thing. Although I have
Yeah.
thought there's probably a lot of people who moved from the city in the middle of the pandemic, and then they're going to find themselves like if they haven't had the country experience before, they might be like, what did we get ourselves into? Like, Toronto mid-pandemic can look bleak,
Right.
but PEI midwinter can look pretty bleak too. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
So true. I know. I mean, like, to be fair, we did have a very easy winter last year. Like, it didn't really snow until late November. Like, it was pretty chill. And I understand sometimes, like, our neighbor told us it snowed in June before where we live. Like, it
Right.
is definitely a colder, like, growing zone and colder climate than Toronto. But like, man, it's so worth it for us. But I mean,
That's
it's very different. So I had an apartment at York and James in Hamilton, where literally at 3 a.m. it would just be like people screaming, people partying, ambulance, fire truck.
yeah, yeah.
What do you want?
In
Like
the
any
action.
noise, you can have it.
Right. That's
So,
amazing.
so like, of course, living here, there's silence, and it actually took a while for us to figure out, like, how do we sleep here? What's going on? There's nothing happening.
Yeah, yeah.
Every creak of the house, you'd be like, oh, what's happening? Is that like what?
But that's amazing. Yeah, and you've gotten used to it.
Now it's like, can't sleep in the city. How could we?
Right. Wow. So let's go back a little bit. So you grew up just outside of Hamilton, Summers in
Mhm,
North Bay.
mhm.
Uh, young mom. You said your mom was quite young
Yes, very young. Yeah,
when
18.
and she was raising you and your
Yeah,
brother.
yeah, my little brother Tyler. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah, totally,
Yeah,
totally. That would have.
and my dad, Dave Lightfoot. That's how I got the Lightfoot name when I was a little 3-year-old. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so it's my step. I mean, he's my dad. My
Yeah.
stepdad when I was
Yeah.
3.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
So there was music in the house?
Actually, no music in the house because neither Marianne Lightfoot nor David Lightfoot like to listen to music other than like putting on my Suzuki piano tapes, which I had to listen to and like, play along to my lessons. I think I started piano lessons at 5, but luckily my mom's mom, Lorna, I have a tattoo of her initials. She was an amazing and accomplished piano player in all rights, but specifically she was like kind of a honky tonk piano player,
Oh
um, and,
wow.
and became a pro. So like, I guess there was like, she always wanted lessons when she was a kid, and her eldest sister, Alice, had lessons. She didn't, my grandma didn't get the lessons. I don't know whether it was because they were farmers or what the deal was, but um, eventually she kind of started learning from Alice and playing a bit. And I think when she was 12, she went to a dance at a Legion or a church, and there was a big storm and the organist couldn't make it. And so my grandma was like, I'm 12, I'll play, and played the whole dance like the Legion, or I think it was a church, must have been a church. And she played the whole night, and everyone was like, what? How could, we didn't know that you could even do this. And she knew every song, and it was just like, yeah.
Wow. Just
So
secretly learning this stuff.
yeah, like amazing. Um, so that was my grandmother on my mom's side, and she gave. I would like to say that it did skip a generation. I'm being
Right.
honest. I love my mother.
Now, did you spend time with your grandmother, or was this passed on genetically, but not
Yeah,
not
no, I
not in
did.
teaching? She didn't or did oh, you spent time with
Oh,
her. She played and
totally.
oh, cool.
Yeah, she was hanging out till I was about 18, and she passed away. So
Oh wow. So you got time with her. You got time with that knowledge. And was she still playing honky tonk style piano? Like could she
totally.
crush that left hand and everything
Yeah.
else?
Yes, that. Thank you. Thank you. The left hand. It's
It's just such a the thing is that honky tonk piano, it's a bit like Celtic piano, strangely. And I don't know much about Celtic music, but I remember watching Gordy Sampson's mom play flow, and I was just
mm,
like, what is happening? Like this is
wow.
you're doing this crazy stride from like big jumps on the left hand, and it's like you're making people dance.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing about honky tonk, it's dance piano.
Yeah.
So it's very heavily rhythmic on the left hand. If your left
Boom,
hand
boom,
is
boom, 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 boom.
you're
Like it's
covering
like a
so
bass
much.
drum.
It's like a bass drum. It's like the bass and the drums and everything, So like
Mhm,
I always find it as a style, it's very specific. As you
mhm.
said, like, you have to kind of well, you probably have to play in places where people are dancing and you realize how you need to approach the rhythm. Because if you start to go lazy on the rhythm or, on your left hand, go too soft or whatever, it's just not going to keep people moving.
Yeah, exactly. I'm connecting the dots to something now. Thank you for doing this. Fresh start. But my like the way that I play guitar often I'll have my thumb going like on bass notes and stuff while I'm playing. Like, you know, of course I love Chet Atkins. But now I'm connecting it up with the fact that it's probably from my grandma, because it was like she was holding down the bass part and the melody and
Yeah.
singing. And that's what I do. So
There you go.
thanks for
Can,
connecting the family lineage.
well, it makes sense. I mean, if you're sitting around watching someone who can cover all the bases by themselves, it's kind of how you understand music to be played. You're like, oh yeah, well this is, if I'm going to play it on this instrument, well, I still have to be able to do the same things that she did.
I think it's necessity. Honestly,
Yeah, yeah.
necessity is the mother of invention. It was like I was playing all these solo gigs forever. I'd play by myself. Like, what am I going to do? I have to cover all the bases. And then it became difficult, of course. And even now, like I don't have a guitar player in my band. It would probably be really, I think it is really difficult sometimes to sit in with people who are used to being the only, like used to covering all the bases. So like the only experience I can think of recently, I played, do you know Steve Dawson?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a gig, an awesome gig with Steve, and he played guitar on my songs, and it was like the most fun. It's like, what do you want to do a solo? What do you want to do? Like,
Wow.
and it was just,
He's an amazing player, and great
and,
listener, and
oh,
he's played with so many people that he probably has, and a lot of solo artists.
yes.
So we might be used to that kind of like the space that people who've played a lot of solo shows take up. I mean, I think I still like, I'm kind of the same way. A lot of
Mhm.
what I end up doing and the way I play it's all messed up. Someone wrote me asking for guitar lessons recently, and I was like, I'm not the person you want. Like I'm terrible because I play with my thumb. I'm kind of the same way, and then
Yeah,
my kind of like my downstroke with my fingers,
yeah,
basically the snare drum. It's
yeah,
kind of just boom, so I
yeah,
can kind of cover that. But as soon as I get a drummer, then I'm kind of competing with what they want to do. You
right.
know what I mean? And then I'm kind of doing the bass part, so I kind of have to just. It's been an ongoing kind of learning experience that I don't think I'm particularly gifted at. I really admire people when I watch them with a band,
Mhm.
and they're just kind of like strumming with a pick, like shang 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 shang.
Yeah,
I don't understand how to do that.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I do. I do that too now, of course, but
I'm
somebody like
trying.
it's reminding me of Matt too, like watching Matt solo. It's so interesting to see him with like the melatones versus him solo, because he can take up all the space
Yeah.
or none of it. Like often when he's with this big band, he'll just take his hands off.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know, and be
think
like, I'm not even playing. Don't need to play. So
maybe
great.
that's a learning. Probably a learned skill. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure
Hmm.
at first he wanted to fill out that because that's what he did. I mean, as you know, you've played shows with Matt before. It's like one of the most phenomenal things you've ever seen.
Hmm.
He fills up that space. Like when it comes to this, so he's playing solo. Playing solos when you're solo
Hmm.
is weird
Yeah.
because there's no chords underneath you. You know what I mean? Like you got it's a particular skill, and he did it for years.
Yeah.
To like, I mean, he played. I opened for him at Massey Hall, and he played
Mm.
Massey Hall solo and
Yeah.
sold the
He doesn't
place out.
care.
He doesn't care. He was like, "What do you mean?" And they don't. And the best part is they don't care. The crowd's like, "I'm here for this."
Yeah. They're like, great, moving on. I also love, like, one other thing that I love about Matt is that he has no rider. No
No rider.
rider.
Yeah, yeah. I had a rider.
Like playing
My
Massey
rider
Hall,
was
no rider.
my rider was like way bigger than his. I felt terrible. Like by
I
the
need
second gig,
green seedless grapes.
somehow I ended up with like a bottle of vodka every night. I'm not really even a drinker, and I'm like, man, I don't know how this happened, but I'm kind of sorry. And I was like, and he's like, he has like a towel and like a single bottle of water, like
Yeah.
literally nothing. He is like, I felt so soft on that tour. It was amazing. Like I was constantly like drinking tea and feeling like I was going to lose my voice.
Right.
We were driving after the gigs. I was just like super tired. And I just felt
Right.
like the shows were great. We were having a blast. He's one of my
Hmm.
favorite people. But I would be like taking care of myself so tenderly. And then he would
Hmm.
come out and do the open. He would have not have slept. He might have driven after the gig until
I
4.
know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He would have slept for a few hours, and then he does his sound check, and he's like, like 4 octaves, full volume, and you're like, no tea, no nothing, and you're like his bottle of water and a towel, and I'm like, okay, go for it, like it's amazing.
Yeah. The only thing I know is that he does like a wardrobe change. So
Yeah,
that is, and as we all do, that, that's the one thing I have seen him consistently do. So
the
he doesn't
wardrobe
need
change.
the green seedless grapes, does
No.
need a shirt.
Yep, that's a good move.
Different shirt.
That's a
That's
good
it.
move. Yep, for sure. That's it. His needs are simple. He's amazing. It's been amazing to watch his career develop, but also just he's one of those people that you watch and you feel you are doing exactly what you should do. You were
Yeah.
absolutely born. You were born with a gift. His
Mhm.
voice is a gift, and you he shares it. He is there to share his gift,
He's
and that's
also
it.
so
Like,
simple with it. Like most people, either they don't get that, or ch- they present it in a way that is, to me, unpalatable. With Matt, it's just like, yeah, that's cool. Like that's what I'm
right.
here to do. We're just here to play.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
that's right.
so
No, he
much
doesn't
humility.
overthink. So much humility. I think it might be, we've talked about it before. I think it's part of his upbringing, you know. He grew up
I've
in
met his folks.
they're amazing, right? His dad
Yeah,
worked in
yeah,
the woods in Andover for years. He went out and worked all day.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure Matt kind of like many people who are exposed to work like that,
Hmm.
they don't spend too much time complaining about being on the road.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's kind of
Hmm.
like I saw my dad go into the woods and work in the woods. That's not easy work anywhere,
Hmm.
and did it for into his well into his as he aged,
Hmm.
didn't stop. And so I think that part of that is just he appreciates hard work. He doesn't mind working hard. He doesn't see it as being work. He's like, yeah, no, this is great. I'm me on the other hand was like, oh gosh, I'm so tired.
I need my rooibos tea, please.
Exactly.
Can I get that water at 104 degrees? Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's pretty great. But so when did you started piano Suzuki? Interestingly enough, the
Mm,
Suzuki method. You like that? You like doing the? It's kind of ear based. I was a Royal
yeah,
Conservatory guy, so I'm
I
interested.
I also tried that.
Okay.
I had about, I guess what happened was my first Suzuki teacher, who I loved, and we would get to go to her house, and she lived in this beautiful house. It was like so much fun, and you get a candy after the lesson, which I really dug. And then she had like an immediate health issue, quit giving lessons, and so my mom then signed me up with somebody from RCM. And then I had a succession. My brother was also doing these lessons, a succession of like 7 teachers. And each one, there was some problem with each one of them, either with me not listening to them or with them. Like I remember one of them, my mom like came home or something, but unexpectedly, and came in through a door where the teacher didn't know she was there. And she heard her talking to me and was like, oh no, we're done. We are done. Thank
Oh
you.
wow, yeah, yeah,
And I was trying, of course, like I was trying to tell my mom, I'm like, she's mean to me, but then, you know,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. But then your parent hears the tone and they're like, oh, no, this isn't gonna work. I get that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And like, I've also taught music in my adult life. So I get that part too, but I just couldn't stick with it after that. And I think my mom finally let me quit when I was 10, at which point she bought me a guitar at a garage sale with 5 strings on it.
wow. And then that was like game over. 5 strings was enough.
Game
Close
over.
enough.
Yeah,
Really?
I could, yeah, it was
Piano was
amazing.
was done.
It just wasn't cool anymore. And I think I had left, like, of course, now as an adult, I totally would kick my younger self for not just going to my grandma's house every day. Like I did go over there a lot, and it was sort of walkable from where I lived. But like, if I would have sat with her and learned those honky tonk tunes, I never did. I didn't understand country and like country progressions. And like she would do like, some Celtic stuff, like these progressions that we all now know and are in the back of our brains, and you could play them while you were asleep. 1 4 5,
Yeah. Yeah,
4
yeah.
1. Moving on. But I didn't know those at the time because I was going through this phase in high school of being like rock, punk, blues, like that kind of thing. And so I was disconnecting, and then she died.
Yeah.
And so there were a couple of moments where I'd sit with her obviously, and I would try and play, but I'd follow along like, okay, so it's C, and then I guess she's going to G, and then I guess she's going to D, and trying to follow along. I remember one time specifically, she came over and I think I could drive at this point. She was like, "Can you take me to the plaza, please?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." So I drive her, and she's like, she wanted to go to the LCBO. Never knew she had drank in her life. She buys a tiny Mickey of like, I forget what kind of whiskey, and then like comes back to our house and just like sips on the whiskey. No one's home except me and her. And we just like had the best jam ever. This was just
Wow.
before. Yeah, it
This
was
is before she
amazing.
passed away.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, then you carry that.
Yeah.
You carry that with you. I mean, it is a funny thing, of course. I'm sure many people have this experience that they look back and go, well, I wasn't in the place at 16 to really absorb all that
Mhm.
because we're not, you know what I mean? We don't necessarily look to our grandparents at that age or our parents at that age to what they're up to and go, oh yeah, that's cool actually.
Yeah.
You're usually like, no, I'm finding my own thing.
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden the opportunity's kind of lost. And you're like, you know, but it's not lost because you have all these real memories and you have that, you know, I mean, it's probably in some ways feels like a very close memory that you were
Oh,
sitting
totally.
beside her and listening to her
Yeah. The
and
other
you're playing like
crazy,
bar chords. You're like way up on the neck trying to play like, yeah, you're everything's like way up here. She's like, no, you
yeah,
can just play
no
your
open
C. Like,
chords.
yeah,
Just
of
like
course.
play a C. Play one C chord and let it ring, and that's
And you're
it.
like,
That's all you
C,
have to
where's
do.
C again? Just 1 second. I'm just like
Oh,
eighth fret. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
picture what she would have felt. Like I can't imagine. I mean, like how she would have like thought of me playing that. Like I'm surprised that, I mean, she was such a wonderful person. She just didn't take the time to be like, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. She would just
Right.
let me play and do my thing. And
And were you singing
there,
at that age?
no,
Okay,
scared
no,
of
no
it.
singing. Okay, yeah.
Did do it in my bedroom alone, where my parents actually thought I had a friend over. So my friend Stephanie, who lived around the corner, she used to sing too. Like but I guess my mom would think that Stephanie was over if somebody was singing in my room quietly. She's like, Stephanie has such a beautiful voice. It's like, I know,
Why can't you sing like Stephanie?
but it was always me. Um, but I'm reminded of another thing that happened right before my grandma died. Um, she had heard me on the radio. I was on college, like Mohawk radio in Hamilton. And I don't even remember what song it was, but I had done an acoustic demo and somebody put it on the radio and it was a big thing. I remember she had a copy of it and she would play it and she was just like, what a big thing. I knew she was proud of me, of course, as any relative is. And then about, I want to say a month before she went into the hospital, last hospital trip that lasted a week or something. She never ended up coming home after, but she was on the phone. I had just stopped over in the middle of the day for some reason, and I was just sitting there hanging out. She was on the phone with somebody, and she handed me kind of absent-mindedly a suitcase. And it was like this old suitcase, and I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what this is. She's still on the phone, having a normal conversation. So I open the suitcase, and it's a bunch of music, like old, really cool sheet music that she loved, obviously. And I go a little deeper and I find this envelope wrapped with gold string, like ribbon, whatever. And I pop it open and it's all these letters from record labels in the 60s who had listened to her demos and said that they weren't good enough to be put out. So she has a letter from RCA.
Oh my.
I know. Because in 1964, that was when she was playing. She would play on the Via train between Toronto and Montreal, and like playing the honky tonk car was like a whole thing. She'd play for the tourists and play requests, and it was, she would lead people in song. It was a party. It was literally the party car. But so this is when
Solo, no band. Like
solo,
she's in charge of the party. That's the
left hand,
coolest thing.
left
Yes.
hand is having the party.
Yes. Yeah.
But so I guess at this time, somebody somewhere would have said, hey, you should record, like somebody should record you. And in the 60s, that's a big thing for an independent, she's a mother of 4 or 5 at this time. Yeah. So that's a huge thing. So she spent the money, did the recording, and somebody just said it. I remember the RCA one specifically. They said, although you do have a beautiful voice and beautiful playing style, we just don't feel that it would be commercially viable at this time. Thank you. And so I'm reading these letters in front of her while she's on the phone, not looking at me. And I just close the suitcase. We, have our visit or whatever after she gets off the phone. And that was it. And then she was in the hospital and then she was gone.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
I mean, there's so much there. There's so much there. First of all, she gave you those she gave you that to look at, at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept them
Yeah,
all those years. She
I
kept them.
know.
She raised kids. Like, it's kind of super badass. First of all, like, to be able to look at rejection
Mm-hmm.
is so important. You know what I mean? I think it's some one of those things, especially from her perspective. Here's a woman who's late in her life at this point.
Mm-hmm.
She's kept these for, she's obviously, and she's passing them to you. It's almost like it's like a strange badge of honor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
I got past this. It's not like she didn't pack it up and stop playing. Like, she
Mm-hmm.
kept playing. She
Mm-hmm.
kept living. She raised kids as a musician in the 60s. Like,
Yeah.
that would have been so hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's an incredible story. Do you still have
Mm-hmm.
these letters?
Oh yeah. I basically haven't taken anything out of that suitcase ever. I've added very special things of mine because I've obviously, as a musician in my 20s, I moved everywhere to try and keep my rent low. But that suitcase went everywhere with me. And it's always just been in a sacred, like the safest place in the house. That's where it always lives. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing. It 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 felt like it was almost intuitive on her part too, because I know this happens sometimes when people are feeling that they're going to be ill. Like she was older, of course, but I know sometimes people give things away when they're about to die. Like that's a whole thing. So I feel like that might have been happening. And also, she had so many kids and grandchildren and people who loved her that I think she knew like she wanted it to go to me in some way, which is really amazing because it did set me up in some ways. It was like, okay, you got rejected and you're okay. Just like what you're talking about, looking at the rejection. And she had no idea. I had no career at this point. Nothing's happening. I'd been on the radio once. Like she had no idea
But
this is what I was going
you
to
were the
do.
keeper. You were the keeper of the flame. You were you know what I mean? Like, you're the lineage. You are
Yeah.
the lineage of music in that family,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like it's so interesting because it's like a as you said, like, it's like preparation. It's like, if you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do this, this is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even gonna like I'm not gonna lecture you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna tell you about my greatest successes. I'm gonna just give you this, and you're gonna look at this, and you're gonna be able to look at my life and make your own decision. That is just, it's very, very profound.
Also, this is really interesting too, but later, I think my aunt had a copy of this article in the Toronto Star, which was about her. It was about her playing on the train in the 60s. Like somebody had done this piece just saying like, Lorna's train car, it's a place you can go to hear anything. Visitors from all over the world come to hear Lorna Colladay. And did a bit about, like when she would stop in Montreal, she'd go get her hair done and she had a little apartment there. And it was like, just a very cool piece on her. But that wasn't in the suitcase. So she didn't care about that. She didn't care about the
Wow.
positive, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's very interesting.
We're uncovering things today, David.
Yeah, no, I love this. I mean, I just can't. I know. I didn't know. This is what's fun about this. This is what I'm talking about. I didn't know where. I didn't even take any notes. I was just like, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be fun. It's because such a cool story. So
Mhm,
you're 18 at this point. You're playing guitar. You're singing secretly.
mhm.
She was country music. You were rock and blues. What kind of stuff? What was the rock and blues? Like, you know, what were the big records for you at like 14 when you found your
Mhm.
own music? Your parents weren't listening to music, so you found your own. You get your first couple records. What were the big ones?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, he would admittedly, when he was vacuuming only listening, he would listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan,
Okay.
which is like ridiculous. My bio dad, who I didn't spend a ton of time with, but enough, he got me onto AC/DC and like Stones. I suppose the other thing I was getting into at that time was like Beatles. My first tape, of course, when I was 8 years old, was Beach Boys. So I
Yep.
was into that harmony. Um, I mean, I was listening to some punk stuff, but also like Simon and Garfunkel became huge for me around like, yeah, 16, 17, 18, like huge. Bridge
Uh-huh.
Over Troubled Water. But yeah, I was like also just absorbing the Beatles, right? Like driving to school, listening to I'm Only Sleeping. Like it was just like always singing harmony in my car. That became a very safe space too, because that was my spot where I could listen to music and it could
Yeah.
get loud. Of course, my parents wouldn't care, like if I was listening to stuff. I also loved Weezer. That was a
Okay.
huge one.
Yeah, yeah.
Huge. Yeah, love them.
So were you playing electric mainly at this point? Like, were you plugging in or were you playing an acoustic guitar at home?
Plugging in, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what I guess I got. Rick, I got my guitar that I still play, like cannot put down when I was
This is that's
17.
that's the SG.
Yeah, Veronica.
Oh,
Yeah, I bought.
you've named the SG as a name.
Oh yeah,
Okay. I
yeah. I
love it.
even had a guitar strap, like a very nice guitar strap made by a guy in Nashville that says Veronica on it. That's what I play. You know how some people have their names on?
Yeah, yeah, that's the cool. That's yours gives the name to the guitar. I love it.
Well, at first I was like, yeah, I should get a custom guitar strap, and then I was like, I'm just gonna put the guitar's name on it. That's cool.
Beautiful. And you're still playing it. 17. You got it when you were 17.
Yeah, can't put it down. Nearly 20 years later, that's insane.
Isn't it heavy? Don't you
Yeah.
find SGs kind of heavy? You don't want you like it.
Oh
You
no,
like
it's
them.
not heavy. No, not
Oh, it's
compared to
not too heavy.
what. Yeah,
Oh, that's good. I
yeah.
try, I'm like frail. I'm like so super frail. I tried like a Les Paul once and I was like, ooh, this is a back problem waiting to happen.
No, Les Pauls are a back problem for
Okay.
sure, but SGs are light.
I didn't know
They can
that.
be airy. Yeah, you should try one.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
There you go.
I can help you. I
Yeah,
can help
that
you with
sounds
SG
good.
sourcing.
That sounds good. I'd like that.
Actually, Matt can too. I bought an SG with him in Chicago. We went to the music exchange,
Oh, that's
and I
cool.
bought like a replica, pretty much the same one to Veronica. I was trying to replace it so it was something that I could bring on the road,
Yeah.
and not feel scared about. And of course, I don't love it as much as I love the original. So
And what are
still
you going to
travel
do?
with that.
Guitars are meant to be played. So you take it and you travel. That's what you do. You travel with that guitar still. That's your main guitar.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've spent an inexorbitant amount on the case for it. So I pack it in a mono
Yeah.
case and then I double an SKB hard shell base case over top.
Wow.
And fly with that.
That's
A little
amazing.
insane. Yeah. But
So I love this idea of being a hidden singer. I too
oh
was
yeah.
I too was a hidden singer. That's a big time.
Who was
Yeah.
your friend? Did your parents think you had a friend over?
Not as much as my brother was the singer. Like
Oh,
I'm the youngest of four. I'm the
wow.
youngest of four boys, and my dad directed musicals and stuff.
Mm,
And dad was quite a good singer and player, and was in choirs and used to sing in the kind of
mm,
environment. And then my brother Sean was a good singer, and he was like in productions and like musicals. And I wasn't. I played trumpet. I was like a trumpet player. And I still play trumpet. I didn't play guitar at all. But I
right.
remember I was very much that secret. I had a job downtown in Fredericton when I was in high school, and it was like a vegetable store that no one came to. It
Mm,
was like they didn't get very much business at all. And I got
mm.
a Chet Baker cassette from a friend,
Oh,
and I
love
played it
that.
over and over and over and over. And I started
Mm.
singing to it, and I was like, I can't tell anybody, but I want to sing. Like I know my brother is the real singer, and I don't think I'm as good a singer as he is, but I really want to sing. And I just kept it hidden. I didn't sing for a while,
Mm.
So I find that really interesting when you kind of have to, when you make that switch where you're like, okay, I'm a singer now and I'm going to sing in front of people. My parents are going to find out, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to
Yeah.
sing. And when did that happen for you? When was it like, okay, enough singing in the car. I'm going to actually like play guitar and I'm going to sing at the same time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, I'm remembering, I guess the secret singing was when I was a little bit younger, like maybe before 14, because around 14 is the time that I started playing in bands, like little rock punk bands. And I remember I put on a show. I hired 11 different local bands to come to the Waterdown Legion. I remember the date, June 30th. And it was like insane. I don't know how they let me have this show. Like I was 14. I think maybe my mom helped me rent the Legion,
And
and
you
they were.
put the show on, like you were the presenter.
I was the promoter. Yes,
Yes.
14-year-old
Yes.
promoter. It was
Yes.
hilarious. Um, I think my mom must have helped me, but I just remember the people at the Legion being so mad because it was so loud, like horribly loud. And there were obviously too many kids, like it was kids. I think maybe they thought it was going to be a different clientele, but obviously nobody's drinking. It was like, they're selling like pop or water or
Yeah.
whatever it was. They weren't making any money. Um, but yeah, I just remember that being one of the best days ever. But I didn't want at that time, like throughout high school, I played in bands, but I wouldn't want my mom to come. I would be afraid of her. I still actually, she doesn't sit in the front row because if she does, I'll just like be distracted.
I recently asked my mom not to sit in the front row.
Mom,
Like
please don't.
seriously, she had front row tickets, and I was like, I'm really sorry, but can you just like move back a little bit because it will like I had exactly the same feeling.
I'm also
Very
so
interesting.
interested, not to switch topics, but you being the youngest, like that's so huge that you were able to like step into that, even though your older brother was the singer.
Well, I think that maybe it was the only position in the family that would have been able to. Like there was a lot of
Mm,
pressure. It was a high pressure environment
mm,
to not play music. You know what I mean? Like to be a professional in other
right.
domains. So like two of my brothers have PhDs, another's a medical doctor. They stayed in school. They like were very,
Whoa.
very serious and driven. Dad was super strict,
Mm,
super driven. It was like this was his shot. You know what I
right.
mean? Like he didn't have any money when he grew up poor, and he
Hmm.
was like, This is it. I'm going to put
Hmm.
everything into these kids, and we're just going to go." And he was intense.
Wow.
And so I don't think there was much like my brother, my oldest brother. He he knew his multiplication tables to 12 when he went into grade 1. Like it was like he was trained. And so being a musician wasn't going to, even though he's a great musician, he plays in the band now. Like all my
Mm,
brothers play music, but playing it professionally wouldn't have been it, probably because they went easy enough on me. The fourth position, they kind of loosen up. They've kind of like stopped paying attention a little bit.
yeah.
Things their role. And so that's my rebellion. My rebellion is like playing trumpet and, singing Chet.
I'm doing jazz, guys. That's what I'm up
Exactly.
to. Yeah.
That was my rebellion. Seriously, it was like singing Chet Baker like love ballads. I haven't gone anywhere since. Like it's so funny,
Yeah.
you
That's
know.
amazing. I was also immersed in jazz too. I forgot. I mean, I went to jazz camp. I was doing so much music. It's like easy to forget all the lines of connection. But yeah, like I think at 14 and 15, maybe I went to jazz camp twice. Um, which sounds hilarious, of course, but I played like double bass and really got into that side of things. So I had like a really well-rounded kind of approach.
Yeah.
Um, and but it's because there was no music at home, right? So there was nothing for me to go on. The only thing I will say my mom listened to is David Wilcox,
Okay.
Canadian blues guitarist. That's what I
Oh
was
yeah.
listening to when I was a little kid. Like, and it makes so much sense now, of course. If you listen to like Do the Bearcat, I was like, this is where it is at.
Yeah,
This
yeah. Like I
is
could.
music.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. This sums up my work.
Yeah,
This is a groove I would dream of
yeah,
sitting in for the rest of my life. Bearcat
yeah,
is so sick.
yeah. Or Bad Apple. Done. Like that's all my records.
David Wilcox. Isn't that the weirdest thing though? Like but yeah, I feel that. Like my mom didn't listen to tons of music. She listened to James Taylor. She loved James Taylor, and I'm kind of
Oh.
like there's moments where I'm like I'm kind of just kind of edging around what James Taylor did, like that
Mhm,
sound, that feeling.
mhm,
Sometimes it's just a sound and feeling, and it was like the one record she listened to, but it
mhm.
somehow like because it's my mom, I guess.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
like, but your mom was listening to the Bearcat.
Yeah.
That's
But no,
pretty
I
cool.
mean, I don't know if it, yeah. I don't know why. It's so interesting now. Of course, as soon as I started playing music, that's all she listens to. So she would jog when I had no recordings. I remember I did a collab with my friend Dave on his kind of electronic project. It's called Conduits. Is it called Conduits? It's not called Conduits. I don't remember what the project was called. This is like 15 years ago, but I had sang on it for him, and my mom only listened to that track like while exercising. She was like, "I love this music." I was like, "Mom, you have to listen to a different song. You can't just listen to one.
It's so
That's
beautiful though. That
crazy.
is so. It's so nice though,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, it's just that excitement that your mom had for what you were doing
Yeah.
is that's unreal. Because in the early stages, even though it kind of is funny and you're like, oh, you can listen to other stuff, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
You
But
know
I
what I
mean,
mean? Like
opposite
it's
to the strictness. There was like no strictness in our house. Like it was
interesting.
like no pressure. Well, there was, I was the first person to graduate university across the board in my family. It was like a whole different, there was no pressure to do that. It was just like, oh, you're doing that? Awesome. Cool.
Wow, yeah, cool. So you went to university and played guitar. Like you were playing music and going through, and you studied like you didn't study music at the university, or did you?
No, I did conflict studies and anthropology. So
Okay.
the study of people, which of course is like all informed, it all informed my creativity ultimately. And like, ethnography, like studying people, it was like it really kind of played into songwriting in some ways for me too, because it was like, oh, this is how you sit and observe. And like these are the stories that, when you're like anthropology, when you read something that really gets to you, it's like you learn about how to kind of engage your reader or engage your, in this case, listener. So I think that was really helpful. And
Interesting.
yeah, but so I did absolutely nothing with that degree. I began teaching music right after university.
But you don't regret the degree.
I think it's
It
great.
doesn't sound like you do. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I kind
Did
of
you
feel the
did
same
you
way. I did a
did you
political
go?
science degree.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Similar to conflict site.
Totally
Totally.
loved it. Loved it.
Yeah.
Still informs
Yeah.
how I think about the world and how I approach problems. And I think you're right. Probably does influence the songwriting. Were you writing songs during those years?
I was like, I remember I basically have this very strange path that even though like the circumstances with which I was given, which was like living with my young mom and young stepdad and little brother in a little apartment in Waterdown, I ended up having all these opportunities, like going to jazz camp on scholarship, uh, having my grandparents live in this beautiful lake house that I got to go to all the time. And the one that happened in university was that I got a scholarship to go to India to study for 3 months, to kind of, I guess, present a thesis on women's health and children's health, which was abysmal. And it's super depressing. And it's why I ended up not going forward with any master's degree, because when I went there, I was kind of like, we were traveling around and visiting different people and doing a ton of interviews. And I found that like the women that I interviewed, number one, were so amazing that like they'd be like, oh yeah, and then so I had my two kids and then my third kid died. And I'm like, okay, like what happened? And they're like, oh, they had the flu. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
horrible, horrible stuff. And you realize like there's nothing you can do in academia. I wrote my paper, I wrote my thesis, and I handed it in. And you're supposed to give prescriptions at the end, like, what can be done about this? Like, well, what am I going to do? What did I
Mm-hmm.
do by writing this paper? But I do remember playing music on that trip and writing some songs. One of them appeared on my very first self-titled record called Orissa, which is a place in India, and I wrote it on the beach.
And what part of India were you in?
Kind of the Northeast. Yeah, it
Okay.
was really, uh, you know, it was intense. We stayed mainly in this place called Patna, which is in Bihar, which was essentially the Hamilton of India. Because
Okay.
everywhere we went in India, they'd be like, "Oh, Patna, oh, the worst."
Oh, well, I don't say that about Hamilton. I'm just gonna put it out there.
I know.
But that's funny. Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. That's an interesting. I did an exchange in university as well. I went to China.
yeah,
I
yeah. And
studied in China, and
did you?
I started writing songs
Yeah,
when I lived in China, and it was
right.
this way of it was shelter from the storm. I mean,
Mhm,
I had such an amazing year there. It was so fascinating. It was difficult and challenging in a good way, and
mhm.
it was good. It's really affected how I look at the world, but at the same time, I remember a lot of time I was alone.
Right.
I didn't have many friends at first, and I was an outsider. obviously, you know. And
Yeah.
so I bought this little guitar and just started. That was my kind of way into
Mm.
to creating a universe. It's really interesting to hear that that's where you know that you were writing songs in a similar situation.
Did you play guitar before that?
No, not really. It
So
was
you
like
just picked it
yeah, like
up?
at 21, I started like this summer. Someone showed me a few chords when I was like 20, 21. Moved to
Wow.
China, and then I like went from not playing it to playing it like you know just probably like you when you were 14. You know, like a lot of
Hmm.
people was just like, oh my gosh, this has unleashed an entire universe of possibilities. Because I've been playing trumpet and I couldn't accompany myself. All of a sudden, I could
Right.
sing and play guitar,
Yeah, and
and
you
I
couldn't sing playing trumpet.
no, I so
What are
I
you
was
gonna do?
like,
Do 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 do
yeah,
do. La 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 la
exactly,
la. Yeah.
exactly. So hard to pull off, right? So I just got obsessed, played it endlessly, and I just started writing songs. So it's interesting to. So you made a similar. You started writing songs in a similar situation.
Yeah. And I think too that taught me, like, number one, it was easy to see like the happiness level of the folks that I was meeting who had like very, very little and really rough experiences compared to what, what anyone that I knew had gone through in their lives. It was, and they were just like normal, happy. They didn't view it as like, oh, that's the worst. Like our society, I really started seeing the stark differences, and just like, yeah, I didn't know what I had learned at the time. And then as soon as I turned 30, I was like, oh, I learned about gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know it. I was just like, oh wow, this is intense. And I went home with a new lease on life, being like, that, what we have is incredible, and we're, and the way that I viewed any loss since then has been so different.
Huh.
Because how can you how can you listen to these stories and then say that you've had a loss that's more significant, or get really down on yourself? It's like there's no time for that. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't it doesn't make sense. Um, but yeah, very, very interesting. 21, going on trips when you're 21 is a big thing.
Yeah, crazy. Crazy. I mean, I lived in Belgium when I was 15 for a year, and it was crazy
Whoa,
because my parents just like were like they forced us all out of the house when we were in high school. So
that
I
is
like I lived.
amazing.
I was so young. Now I think about it, I'm like, man, like I got kids now, and I'm like, man, would I be ready to just like pop them out the door in 6 years? And it was an exchange. I lived with another family. It was a great. It was super lucky again, but I mean, I was just like cruising around at such a young age.
Wow. No wonder all
Going to
your
like
siblings.
Amsterdam when I was like 15 with my older brother, meeting him there. He was 19, I'm 15, just like ripping it up in Amsterdam when I was 15, just the
Did
two of
you?
us being like,
Did you rip it up? Was it a party?
oh yeah, it was a disaster, of course. It was a total disaster. It was a freaking paranoid nightmare.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is kind of funny. So, but yeah, no, that's cool. That's really interesting. So you started playing, writing songs, making records. I mean, obviously, like it didn't take long once the first record came out, which was what 2011? No,
Hmm.
2011.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
went right into tour. Like you were basically touring the country right away.
Well, I did something I'd call the Pay Your Dues tour, which was with my friend Scotty. I think I drove I don't even know what year that car was. It was a Cavalier, not in the best repair, and drove it from Ontario to Victoria and back.
Yeah,
That was a big time, like, eye opener. I saw the mountains for the first time. Of course, it was cloudy and rainy that day, so I saw like the bottoms of the trees on the bottoms of the mountains. Um, but yeah, I mean, things didn't really pick up, if I'm honest, till I was like 27. So that whole time, like nationally, I mean, so that whole time I was playing in my country band, the Dinner Bells, like in my 20s kind of thing, 20 to 27. Um, yeah, playing in the Dinner Bells. I was playing solo shows in Hamilton, kind of getting a little bit of a following there, and just kind of like honing my craft. Like I
yeah,
would meet, and same thing, like I would meet people, like, I mean, these happenstance things uh, that would propel me to the next thing. So like I remember I was playing a small bar, and I would back people up too. So I was backing up Michelle Titian on guitar. I was backing up Julie Fader on guitar. Um, do you know Julie?
oh
She's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. We have a
Um,
bunch of common friends. I don't know her super well, but we have tons of common friends.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so, I'm doing all these different things, trying to get to a point. I didn't even know what I was gunning for. I was like, my country band is going to be the next big thing. Here we go. And then we broke up, obviously.
Okay. As, right.
But yeah,
As
I mean,
happens.
yeah, and like all those years in Hamilton really prepped me for what was coming. Like basically, I haven't talked about it a ton, but like there were right before I put out Every Time My Mind Runs Wild, my partner, who was also playing bass in the band, was diagnosed with cancer, which was intense. And we had to like push the record. I think we pushed it like 6 months or something. No hopes of releasing it, just like nothing happening, career like stalled. And then I don't know whether it was like 1 week, Dan Lanois asked me to open for him at the Horseshoe, or the Horseshoe asked me to open for Dan Lanois, whatever happened. We played that, and then Julian Pecan signed on as our booking agent. We put out the record, and then it was like, okay, you're opening for Whitehorse, you're opening for Blue Rodeo, you're opening all these amazing gigs across the country. So that was like 27, 28, and it just happened. And like, it was so great. And obviously my partner at the time healed up. Everything
Beautiful.
was, yeah, everything was pretty much good on his end. So that was good. And he's still healthy, happy, which is great.
Yeah, that is,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I mean, you think about those early years too, though. I kind of always think about them as they're like essential. As you said, you put it, honing your craft. Like
Mhm.
you can imagine if you were thrown in the opportunities at the wrong time. I do tend to believe that things happen at their own pace sometimes. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like everybody when you start, you're desperately wanting for those big opportunities, like Saturday Night Live or whatever. And I'm like, man, if I got on Saturday Night Live when I was 20, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah, nightmare.
Right? Like you just weren't. I wasn't ready. You have to do those gigs. You have to play in your hometown for a long
Yeah.
time and figure
Yeah.
out, okay, how do I relate to an audience and make those fans one by one? Because I sometimes
Mhm.
feel like if it happens too quick, it's so different. It's almost harder, especially now that I'm older. I can kind of look back. I'm like, man, I don't know if I envy a lot of the people was jealous of when I was in my 20s because they skyrocketed to the front of Now magazine or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was necessarily, it was great, but I don't know if it made it any easier because you still have to learn. You still have to play. You still have to like figure out your sound and how you relate to an audience and why you do it,
Yeah.
what you're trying to say.
It still can be uncomfortable. Like I remember, I don't know what I was playing. Was it the Starlight Room? It's downstairs in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like 110 cap show, sold out. Lineup of people like before the show. I think this is like 2017. I can't remember. But everybody was singing so loud, like singing every word. It became, I was like, what is happening? And it was like a wall of sound. And I was like, this is crazy, and it was, instead of like what you expect, like I wanted that obviously when I was like 14 singing in a punk band. Wouldn't that be awesome? um but then when it actually happens, you're like, whoa, that's really loud and like kind of scary, and like
Wow, really?
like
You weren't like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You were like, this is actually really distracting. Like I'm having a hard time keeping it together.
yeah, like it was both amazing and like, yeah, somewhat discombobulating, just like confusing
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah.
Does that make any
It's
sense?
a new
I wasn't ready
experience.
for it.
Of
I
course,
wasn't
that's
ready.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And of course now I'm like, yeah, ready for it all. So stoked.
Right. Right. And that's
Um,
how you feel now? Are you
yeah,
feeling like you're fired up?
love it. Yeah, totally love it. But I mean, it just takes so much experience to get to that point, I think.
Do you have what I find really interesting and what I end up always kind of talking about is more like how do you keep the spirit alive? You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
that just saying that you're fired up. Like I always kind of find like ultimately in our career in the arts, probably most careers, but I'm most familiar with this one because it's inevitably some records do better than others. We put everything into everything we do, and then
mhm,
sometimes they fall flat and it breaks our heart. And
mhm.
you know, do you have some things that you do that kind of help you stay motivated, stay creative? What are the things like you're sounding pretty fired up now? Has it been like that through the
Mm.
pandemic, or has there been some ups and downs? How's that gone?
Yeah, definitely ups and downs. I mean, I think what I've really learned about is pressure, like, and the lack of it, and how that's so great when there's no pressure. That's what works for me. And whether that's pressure that I'm putting on myself or that other people are putting on me, or that it's like perceived, obviously, you know, like, oh, what do they want to hear? Or like, what does my management want to hear? What does my team want to hear? What do I want to hear? What does the person sitting at the desk recording me want to hear? Like all those perceived pressures. It's like, as soon as I let go of that, that enables me to get to a really present place where I can actually do some good work. But I think that for me, it also has to do with like honestly routine. Those are when I do my best work, when I have like a set amount of time and I can kind of go into a place consistently. Like I've been waking up and then meditating and then getting song ideas and going to the piano. And that works. That is so great. And that's where I'm getting a lot of my demo ideas lately, is because I'm kind of like taking time, being quiet in the morning, and then you just get the idea and you're like, oh, okay, it's just happening. It's cool. I
Yeah,
find
right.
it's when you're like tired or when you're driving, those are what really works for me, when I have no choice but to be open. Because a lot of
Interesting.
the time, like we spend our day doing so many other things, you know?
Oh, there's so many distractions, and I'm no better than the distractions. This is the thing. I work on this stuff so much, and I'm just like
Mhm.
I'm dreadful with my phone.
Mm. Yeah, me
Dreadful
too.
with the thing. You know, I mean, it's more powerful than I am. You know,
Mhm.
and so it's beyond getting beyond those distractions is part of that routine. Is giving yourself that time. Whenever I'm talking to people about songwriting, that's kind of what I say. It's like you got to give yourself some space
Mhm.
to create. If you think it's going
Yeah,
to happen when you're just scrolling through Instagram, it's probably not going to happen. That's not when like
yeah.
that's not how you get great at an instrument either. You need to create the space to practice, and then you got to create
Mhm.
the space to write. And that's interesting that you said meditation too, because I love meditation. It's changed my life.
Mhm.
I do it regularly as well, and it's been a
Mhm.
really good practice.
Yeah.
Just it's been a transformative practice, and it's funny because it's so hard. It's so hard. And there's not like I think what's so fun about it is that we've spent our life doing these tasks that are difficult and we get our mind around it, and then this one's
Mhm.
the art of doing nothing, of just trying to empty
Yeah.
yourself and create this space, and it's really counterintuitive because
Yeah.
our mind you realize how quickly our mind wants to work, how
Yeah.
quickly we label stuff good, bad, how
Yeah.
quickly we turn it into something else, to a feeling, to
Yeah.
perception,
Disaster
perceive
maker.
disaster maker, typhoon in the brain, like disaster maker. It's great.
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, I actually, so I've been listening to Matthew McConaughey's audiobook,
Oh yeah, is
which
it
is,
good?
it's hilarious. Like he's so funny, but he has a lot of the same kind of approaches that I would say about creativity that apply. But one of the good ones, and one that I've been hearing in a lot of different places lately, is when we actually let go of the distractions and allow some quiet and allow some space. That's when we can be open, you know? And that's what I definitely, in the past, if I think about like a struggling writing situation where I've been like, "Oh, I'm getting nothing," it's because I'm actually distracted the entire time. Even if I'm sitting at my desk and like with a guitar and sitting in a quiet room and no one's around, and I have like a coffee and I have my, steel cutouts, I have my like all the things that I need for the day. I'm still sitting there being distracted because I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about what's to come of the writing instead of just like existing, letting the writing
Yeah,
happen, you know? And when I do that, when I meditate and I'm like, oh man, I got to go write this idea. That's when those things are happening for me. But when I'm setting it all up and like making it happen, that's when
right.
it won't.
That's so interesting. It's just
Mhm.
so because I agree. Like I think that so much of it that we end up talking about in these conversations all the time is this openness idea, just being
Mhm. Mhm.
open to ideas, open to people,
Mhm.
open to situations, and it's
Mhm.
really it becomes I think it becomes tougher because our tendency is to become more closed, more in our routines, in or in our own perceptions, or I am this type of person, I can't do this, I can't, but just that kind of like constantly reopening to situations and to the possibilities. It's kind of
Mhm.
like the possibilities. It's like with a song, or when you're going back to what we first talked with, like when you're in the room with a collaborator, if you are closed and you're like, well, this isn't going to work because they're not my vibe. They listen to other music. You're done. You're done.
I know.
If you can like, And it's the same thing with a conversation. It's just not going to work if you are already going in and you're like, no, this isn't my type of person. I'm going to close myself off.
Mhm.
It's like if you can, but it's a challenge. It's the
Totally.
challenge. Like if anything, it's like I find that meditation at least the practice at least tries to keep me open.
Mhm. I think too, you
Just a
can,
little space before I judge things. Don't judge.
yeah,
Just let it be for a second.
I've found, because I've done some song camps where you might not have like the most in common with the folks that you're writing with, or like an engineer or whoever it is, but the challenge of those sessions, like usually you end up coming out with something great when you're like, I think I have nothing in common with this person.
Yeah.
And those have usually been the best ones when you're like, hey, we have to find something that we agree on. And when you
But you
do,
often
then
come
it
at it with
usually
these.
goes
That's right, because you've come at it with these
blossoms.
crazy different skill sets often, right? Like the
Yeah.
differences are kind of what makes the magic because
Mhm.
you cross over in this spot, but they might be bringing a whole other sense of melody or harmony or life,
Mhm.
just totally different way of looking at life that all of a sudden
Yeah.
just goes bang.
Feel like we could talk for hours.
Yeah. Sorry. I know. I'm just chatting. I enjoy this.
I'm
Thank
loving
you.
it.
Well, they really, that is, I'm really happy to hear that you're fired up. That's a great spot to be. That's a great spot to be,
Yeah,
through
thank
this.
you.
And I love the idea of pressure. I've been a person who grew up with a lot of pressure, and for a long time I thought I needed pressure. I think in some ways I do, but I think for you to say that is it's really perceptive because we perceive things as when you are considering all of those other things, like you said, what's my team going to think? What's the engineer going to think? Can I
Mhm.
try this? There's no risk. You don't take any risks. You don't
Mhm.
open yourself up to create. All of those things get in the way.
And you try to become somebody who you're not, right? You
That's
try to
right.
inhabit a space that is acceptable. It's like, no, just inhabit your space that you love. You're working in a vegetable store in Fredericton and
Yeah,
nobody's
yeah,
coming and you're listening to Chet Baker. That is who you are.
yeah. Well, the pandemic actually has been good for that. That's the one thing about it that has been good for me is that I've dropped out of, we've kind of dropped out of regular pressure situations. We now,
Mhm.
I feel like I've been able to define, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to come back to doing. These are the things I don't want to do. These are the things I'm
Mhm.
not as worried about checking that box off anymore. I don't have time.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that. And so, and a lot of that's because of, before I'd be like, oh, I have to do this because I have to say yes. I have to do this. And I'm like, wow, that was literally disaster maker. I
Yeah.
created that. That
Yeah.
wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
Team's just doing what a team does. They're just supporting, Anyways, great chatting. Tara, keep on rocking.
Thanks, man.
Keep on. I'm pumped to see you on the road sometime. Pumped to see the live show.
I know. I can't wait until we meet in person.
And we will. And we will. You're always welcome at my house in Fredericton. I'm sure are you touring this year coming up?
I'm doing. I was actually booked to come out east, um, in like June of 2020, I think.
Yep.
But obviously that was
That
dashed.
fateful time. Yeah.
That fateful time. But yeah, I'm hoping to get out there in 2022. That'd be awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right on. Thanks, Tara. It's been really
Thank
nice to
you.
chat. Cool. Take care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.